Hello. Welcome to day two of Northanger Abbey. Full disclosure, not full disclosure. There's nothing full about this disclosure. None of my roommates are home right now, so I am the only thing connected to Wi-Fi. So if this computer decides that it doesn't like that, I'm gonna have a problem. Because yesterday was fine, and there were like four people in the house doing things. So my theory is that it should be beautiful today. But as I said yesterday, I do have new Wi-Fi coming on the 22nd. So if it's not beautiful, first of all, I'm upset. Second of all, fine. But let me know how the stream is, and I will go back and rewatch some, which always feels weird, but I do it anyways. I think that was all of that update. But fun fact. So remember yesterday when we were like, why is it not doing that? Well, or no, not that. Sorry, I saw that I lost my viewer, and I got a little upset. um, but yesterday when we were like, wow, that was a really short first chapter. Well, fun fact. The reason it was a really short first chapter was because I skipped a page. So there was a whole nother page that I missed. So I'll go back and read that. And then we will continue with chapter 3 of Northanger Abbey. Yeah, that's what I'm up to today. That's what we're up to today. Can't remember. Did I usually wait 3 minutes? I started late. I'll wait a couple more minutes. And try and say something of import in those minutes. Yesterday I watched two movies. I watched The Clone Wars, the Star Wars animated movie that precedes the Star Wars animated series, The Clone Wars. It was good. It was actually good. I liked it. It was fun. It felt like Star Wars, except for like Ahsoka, sorry, and Anakin have like nicknames that they call each other, and that does not feel like Star Wars. That feels like children's TV, which is why it premiered. So that makes sense. So I had a fun time with that. And then I watched the film Black Orpheus, which was really cool. It's a retelling of the Orpheus and Eurydice myth that's set during Carnival in Brazil. It was really beautiful and like exuberant. That's the best word for it. It was exuberant. And that was just really exciting. I had a great time with that film. And then been watching the series Hollywood, which is really interesting because like part of me is like, that's just not what Hollywood was. Like it's like I just hope that people don't watch it and be like, yeah, this is Hollywood, like that's what Hollywood does. It's like, no, Hollywood was like, it was not good. It still is not good. And like me having taken multiple classes on how bad Hollywood was is like, I know that, but I hope that like it's not giving Hollywood a better outlook than it deserves. But it's still like it's really like cool series to be like, wow, I really wish this had happened, but it didn't. Those are my hot takes for you. So with my hot takes, which aren't really that hot or strong takes, let's go back and read the second page of the book that I skipped over. Okay, so it was right after Jane Austen called her main character stupid, which is not a great word. So let me... I see why I thought that I was okay when I wasn't. Okay, so we're going back to Volume 1, Chapter 1, the bottom of page 1, where a small accident occurred. Let's do it. Her mother was 3 months in teaching her only to repeat the beggar's petition, and after all, her next sister, Sally, could say it better than she did. Not that Catherine was always stupid. Yikes. By no means. She learnt the fable of the hare and many friends as quickly as any girl in England. Her mother wished her to learn music, and Catherine was sure she should like it, for she was very fond of tinkling the keys of the old forlorn spinet. So at 8 years old she began. She learnt a year and could not bear it, and Mrs. Morland, who did not daughter's being accomplished. Oh, wait. No, I was right. Who did not insist on her daughter's being accomplished in spite of incapacity or distaste, allowed her to leave off. The day which dismissed the music master was one of the happiest of Catherine's life. Her taste for drawing was not superior, though whenever she could obtain the outside of a letter from her mother or seize upon any other odd piece of paper, she did what she could in that way by drawing houses and trees, hens and chickens, all very much like one another. Writing and accounts she was taught by her father, French by her mother. Her proficiency in either was not remarkable, and she shirked her lessons in both whenever she could. What a strange, unaccountable character! For with all these symptoms of profligacy, at 10 years old, she had neither a bad heart nor a bad temper, was seldom stubborn, scarcely ever quarrelsome, and very kind to the little ones, with few interruptions of tyranny. She was moreover noisy and wild, hated confinement and cleanliness, and loved nothing so well in the world as rolling down the green slope at the back of the house. She's like nursing birds, rolling down the green slope at the back of the house. Life. Such was Catherine Morland at 10. At 15, appearances were mending. She began to curl her hair and long for balls. Her complexion improved, her features were softened by plumpness and color. Her eyes gained more animation, and her figure more consequence. Her love of dirt gave way to an inclination for finery, and she grew clean as she grew smart. She had now the pleasure of sometimes hearing her father and mother remark on improvement. Excuse me. Catherine grows quite a good-looking girl. She is almost pretty today, were words which caught her ears now and then, and how welcome were the sounds. To look almost pretty is an acquisition of higher delight to a girl who has been looking plain the first 15 years of her life than a beauty from her cradle could ever receive. Mrs. Morland was a very good woman who wished to see her children everything they ought to be, but her time was so much occupied in lying in and teaching the little ones that her elder daughters were inevitably left to shift for themselves, and it was not very wonderful that Catherine, who had by nature nothing heroic about her, should prefer cricket, baseball, riding on horseback, and running about the country at the age of 14 to books, or at least books of information. For provided that nothing like useful knowledge could be gained from them, provided they were all story and no reflection, she had never any objection to books at all. But from 15 to 17, she was in training for a heroine. She read all such works as heroines must read to supply their memories with those quotations which are so serviceable and so soothing in the vicissitudes of their eventful years. From Pope she learnt to censure those who bear about the mockery of woe. From Gray that many a flower is born to blush unseen and waste its fragrance on the desert air. From Thomson that it is a delightful task to teach the young idea how to shoot. And from Shakespeare she gained a great store of there are to the jealous confirmations strong as proofs of Holy Writ. No idea where that's from. Very sorry to disappoint. That the poor beetle which we tread upon in corporeal sufferance feels a pang as great as when a giant dies. And that a young woman in love always looks, oh, I know this one, like Patience on a monument, smiling at grief. That's from Twelfth Night. I love that line. By its violence. That's such a good, I dropped my bookmark. It's such a good monologue. Anyways, am I Catherine Morland? So far, her improvement was sufficient, and in many other points she came on exceedingly well. For though she could not write sonnets, she brought herself to read them, and though there seemed no chance of her throwing a whole party into raptures by a prelude on the pianoforte of her own composition, she could listen to other people's performance with very little fatigue. Okay, so that's what we missed yesterday. So sorry. I don't know how this happened. I'll be more careful in the future. All right. Well, then let's really get into our reading for today, which is Northanger Abbey, Volume 1, Chapter 3. Every morning now brought its regular duties. Okay, so, recap, hee hee. So yesterday we were introduced to Catherine Morland, a young woman who is super into Gothic novels. And she just thinks her life is going to be an adventure. And she has been invited because there are no eligible because there are no eligible bachelors in her neighborhood. She has been invited to go to Bath. That's where they're usually invited, so I'm going to go with it. She's been invited to go to Bath with, I want to say, the preacher's wife. So she's off for 6 weeks. As she's traveling there, nothing exciting happens, and they go to a ball where they don't know anyone and basically just end up sitting together the whole night and being like, we don't know anybody here, and no one will dance with me. And that's what happens at the ball. And then they left the ball, and that was what happened yesterday. So they're in Bath. Apparently she's shopping, and that's where we're at. Okay. Shops were to be visited, some part of the town to be looked at, and the pump room to be attended, where they paraded up and down for an hour, looking at everybody and speaking to no one. The wish of a numerous acquaintance in Bath was still uppermost with Mrs. Allen, and she repeated it after every fresh proof which every morning brought of her knowing nobody at all. They made their appearance in the lower rooms, and here fortune was more favorable to our heroine. The master of ceremonies introduced her to a very gentlemanlike young man as a partner. His name was Tilney. He seemed to be about 4 or 5 and 20, and was rather tall and pleasing countenance. A very intelligent and lively eye, and if not quite handsome, was very near it. His address was good, and Catherine felt herself in high luck. There was little leisure for speaking while they danced, but when they were seated at tea, she found him as agreeable as she had already given him credit for being. He talked with fluency and spirit, and there was an archness and pleasantry in his manner which interested, though it was hardly understood by her. After chatting some time on such matters as naturally arose from the objects around them, he suddenly addressed her with, "I have hitherto been very remiss, madam, in the proper attentions of a partner here. I have not yet asked you how long you have been in Bath, whether you were ever here before, whether you have been at the upper rooms, the theatre, and the concert, and how you like the place altogether. I have been very negligent. But are you now at leisure to satisfy me in these particulars? If you are, I will begin directly." "You need not give yourself that trouble, sir. I don't like these accents. I don't like them. I feel bad." "No trouble, I assure you, madam." Then, forming his features into a set smile, and affectedly softening his voice, he added with a simpering air, "Have you long been in Bath, madam?" "About a week, sir," replied Catherine, trying not to laugh. "Really?" with affected astonishment. "Why should you be surprised, sir?" "Why, indeed?" "Oh, no, never mind. Why, indeed?" said he in his natural tone. "But some emotion must appear to be raised by your reply, and surprise is more easily assumed and not less reasonable than any other. Now, let us go on. Were you never here before, madam?" "Never, sir." "Indeed. Have you yet honored the upper rooms?" "Yes, sir. I was there last Monday." I can't do this accent. "Have you been to the theatre?" "Yes, sir. I was at a play on Tuesday." "To the concert?" "Yes, sir, on Wednesday." "And are you altogether pleased with Bath?" "Yes, I like it very well." Now, I must give one smirk, and then we may be rational again. Catherine turned away her head, not knowing whether she might venture to laugh. "I see what you think of me," he said gravely. "I shall make but a poor figure in your journal tomorrow." "My journal?" "Yes, I know exactly what you will say. Friday, went to the lower rooms, wore my sprigged muslin robe with blue trimmings, plain black shoes, appeared much to advantage, but was strangely harassed by a queer half-witted man who would make me dance with him and distressed me by his nonsense. I like him. I think he's fun. I just think he's neat." "Indeed, I shall say no such thing." "Shall I tell you what you ought to say?" "If you please." "If you please." "I danced with a very agreeable young man, introduced by Mr. King, and had a great deal of conversation with him. Seems most extraordinary genius. Hope I may know more of him. That, madam, is what I wish you to say." But perhaps I keep no journal. Perhaps you are not sitting in this room, and I am not sitting by you. These points in which a doubt is equally possible. Not keep a journal. How are your absent cousins to understand that tenure of your life in Bath without one? How are the civilities and compliments of every day to be related as they ought to be, unless noted down in every evening in a journal? How are your oh my God, this is a long one. How are your various dresses to be remembered, and particular state of your complexion and curl of your hair to be described in all their diversities, without having a constant recourse to a journal? My dear madam, I am not so ignorant of young ladies' ways as you wish me to believe. It is this delightful habit of journalizing which largely contributes to form the easy style of writing for which ladies are so generally celebrated. Everybody allows that the talent of writing agreeable letters is peculiarly female. Nature may have done something, but I am sure it must be essentially assisted by the practice of keeping a journal. I have sometimes thought, said Catherine doubtingly, whether ladies do write so much better letters than gentlemen. That is, I should not think the superiority was always on our side. As far as I have had opportunity of judging, it appears to me that the usual style of letter writing among women is faultless, except in three particulars. And what are they? A general deficiency of subject, a total inattention to stops, and a very frequent ignorance of grammar. Excuse you, but is that really their fault? Would you not say that it is your fault for not allowing women to attend school? Would we not think, perhaps? Upon my word, I need not have been afraid of disclaiming the compliment. You do not think too highly of us in that way. I should no more lay it down as a general rule that women write better letters than men, than that they sing better duets or draw better landscapes. In every power of which taste is the foundation, excellence is pretty fairly divided between the sexes. I'm confused. They were interrupted by Mrs. Allen. My dear Catherine, said she, do take this pin out of my sleeve. I am afraid it has torn a hole already. I shall be quite sorry if it has, for this is a favourite gown, though it cost but 9 shillings a yard. That is exactly what I should have guessed it, madam, said Mr. Tilney, looking at the muslin. I can't decide. I want him to be joking, but I can't decide if he is. Do you understand muslin, sir? Particularly well. I always buy my own cravats. Is that right? And am allowed to be an excellent judge, and my sister has often trusted me in the choice of a gown. I bought one for her the other day, and it was pronounced to be a prodigious bargain by every lady who saw it. I gave but 5 shillings a yard for it, and a true Indian muslin. Mrs. Allen was quite struck by his genius. Men commonly take so little notice of these things, said she. I can never get Mr. Allen to know one of my gowns from another. You must be a great comfort to your sister, sir. I hope I am, madam. And pray, sir, what do you think of Miss Morland's gown? It is very pretty, madam, said he, gravely examining it, but I do not think it will wash well. I am afraid it will fray. How can you, said Catherine, laughing so, be so, she had almost said strange. I am quite of your opinion, sir, replied Mrs. Allen, and so I told Miss Morland when she bought it. Oh boy. Is this, what's his face telling me? Oh God. Dialogue. But then you know, madam, muslin always turns to some account or other. Miss Morland will get enough out of it for a handkerchief, or a cap, or a cloak. Muslin can never be said to be wasted. I have heard my sister say so 40 times, when she had been extravagant in buying more than she wanted, or careless in cutting it to pieces. Bath is a charming place, sir. There are so many good shops here. We are sadly off in the country, but not but what we have very good shops in Salisbury, but it is so far to go. 8 miles is a long way. Oh boy. Mr. Allen always says it is 9, measured 9, but I am sure it cannot be more than 8. It is such a fag. I don't like that. What does that mean? A drag, I hope? I come back tired to death. Now here one can step out of doors and get a thing in 5 minutes. Mr. Tilney was polite enough to seem interested in what she said, and she kept him on the subject of muslins till the dancing recommenced. Catherine feared, as she listened to their discourse, that he indulged himself a little too much with the foibles of others. What are you thinking of so earnestly? Said he, as they walked back to the ballroom. Not of your partner, I hope, for by that sake of head your meditations are not satisfactory. Catherine coloured and said, I was not thinking of anything. That is artful and deep, to be sure, but I had rather be told at once that you will not tell me. Well, then, I will not. Thank you. For now we shall soon become what? For now we shall soon be acquainted, as I am authorized to tease you on this subject whenever we meet, and nothing in the world advances intimacy so much. They danced again, and when the assembly closed, parted on the ladies' side at least, with a strong inclination for continuing the acquaintance. Whether she thought of him so much while she drank her warm wine and water, and prepared herself to bed, as to dream of him when there, cannot be ascertained. Whoa! But I hope it was no more than a slight slumber, or a morning doze at most, for if it be true, as a celebrated writer has maintained, that no young lady can be justified in falling in love before the gentleman's love is declared. Advice I wish I could take. Advice. Okay. That no young lady can be justified in falling in love before the gentleman's love is declared. It must be very important that a young lady should dream of a gentleman before the gentleman is first known to have dreamt of her. Improper. It must be very improper that a young lady should dream of a gentleman before the gentleman is first known to have dreamt of her. How proper Mr. Tilney might be as a dreamer or a lover had not yet perhaps entered Mr. Allen's head. But that he was not objectionable as a common acquaintance for his young charge, he was on inquiry satisfied, for he had early in the evening taken pains to know who her partner was, and had been assured of Mr. Tilney's being a clergyman, and of a very respectable family in Gloucestershire. That's a name I should know how to pronounce, having done Macbeth. Okay. I'm going to do another one. Northanger Abbey, Volume 1, Chapter 4. With more than usual eagerness did Catherine hasten to the pump room the next day, secure within herself of seeing Mr. Tilney there before the morning were over, and ready to meet him with a smile. But no smile was demanded. Mr. Tilney did not appear. Every creature in Bath, except himself, was to be seen in the room at different periods of the fashionable hours. Crowds of people were every moment passing in and out, up the steps and down, people whom nobody cared about and nobody wanted to see, and he was only absent. And he only was absent. What a delightful place Bath is, said Mrs. Allen as they sat down near the great clock after parading the room till they were tired. And how pleasant it would be if we had any acquaintance here. Mrs. Allen, surely there is something you can do except for wonder. Excuse me. The sentiment had been uttered so often in vain that Mrs. Allen had no particular reason to hope it would be followed with more advantage now. But we are told to despair of nothing. What? Okay. But we are told to despair of nothing we would attain, as unwearied diligence our point would gain. And the unwearied diligence with which she had every day wished for the same thing was at length to have its just reward, for hardly had she been seated 10 minutes before a lady of about her own age, who was sitting by her, and had been looking at her attentively for several minutes, addressed her with great complacence in these words. I think, madam, and I cannot be mistaken, that it is a long time since I had the pleasure of seeing you, but is not your name Allen? This question answered as it readily was. The stranger pronounced hers to be Thorpe, and Mrs. Allen immediately recognized the features of a former schoolfellow and intimate, whom she had seen only once since their respective marriages, and that many years ago. Their joy on this meeting was very great, as well it might, since they had been contented to know nothing of each other for the last 15 years. Compliments on good looks now passed, and after observing how time had slipped away since they were last together, how little they had thought of meeting in Bath, and what a pleasure it was to see an old friend, he proceeded to make inquiries and give intelligence as to their families, sisters, and cousins, talking both together far more ready to give than to receive information, and each hearing very little of what the other said. Mrs. Thorpe, however, had one great advantage as a talker over Mrs. Allen in a family of children, and when she expatiated on the talents of her sons and the beauty of her daughters, when she related their different situations and views, that John was at Oxford, Edward at Merchant Taylor's, and William at sea, and all of them more beloved and respected in their different situations than any other three beings ever were, Mrs. Allen had no similar information to give, no similar triumphs to press on the unwilling and unbelieving ear of her friend, and was forced to sit and appear to listen to all these maternal effusions, consoling herself, however, with the discovery which her keen eye soon made, that the lace on Mrs. Thorpe's pelisse was not half so handsome as that on her own. "Here come my dear girls," cried Mrs. Thorpe, pointing at three smart-looking females who, arm in arm, were then moving towards her. "My dear Mrs. Allen, I long to introduce them. They will be so delighted to see you. The tallest is Isabella, my eldest. Is she not a fine young woman? The others are very much admired too, but I believe Isabella is the handsomest." The Miss Thorpes were introduced, and Miss Morland, who had been for a short time forgotten, was introduced likewise. The name seemed to strike them all, and after speaking to her with great civility, the eldest young lady observed aloud to the rest, "How excessively like her brother Miss Morland is." "The very picture of him, indeed," cried the mother, "and I should have known her anywhere for his sister," was repeated by them all 2 or 3 times over. For a moment Catherine was surprised, but Mrs. Thorpe and her daughters had scarcely begun the history of their acquaintance with Mr. James Morland before she remembered that her eldest brother had lately formed an intimacy with a young man of his own college of the name of Thorpe, and that he had spent the last week of the Christmas vacation with his family near London. The whole being explained, many obliging things were said by the Miss Thorpes of their wish of being better acquainted with her, of being considered as already friends through the friendship of their brothers, which Catherine heard with pleasure and answered with all the pretty expressions she could command. And as the first proof of amenity, she was soon invited to accept an arm of the eldest Miss Thorpe. Someone's home, I hope. Either that or I'm about to be robbed. I was robbed on YouTube Live. Where was I? I'm lost. There's a lot of door opening going on. Wouldn't that be so sad? Okay, I'm really lost. I really lost the plot. What was happening? Okay, there we go. The first proof of amity, she was soon invited to accept an arm of the eldest Miss Thorpe and take a turn with her about the room. Catherine was delighted with this extension of her Bath acquaintance and almost forgot Mr. Tilney while she talked to Miss Thorpe. Friendship is certainly the finest balm for the pangs of disappointed love. Snaps to that. Their conversation turned upon those subjects of which the free discussion has generally much to do in perfecting a sudden intimacy between two young ladies, such as dress, balls, flirtations, and quizzes. Miss Thorpe, however, being 4 years older than Miss Morland, and at least 4 years better informed, had a very decided advantage in discussing such points. She could compare the balls of Bath with those of Tunbridge, its fashions with the fashions of London, could rectify the opinions of her new friend in many articles of tasteful attire, could discover the flirtation between any gentleman and lady who only smiled on each other, and point out a quiz through the thickness of a crowd. Still don't know what that means. These powers received due admiration from Catherine, to whom they were entirely new, and the respect which they naturally inspired might have been too great for familiarity, had not the easy gaiety of Miss Thorpe's manners and her frequent expressions of delight on this acquaintance with her softened down every feeling of awe and left nothing but tender affection. Their increasing attachment was not to be satisfied with half-a-dozen turns in the pump-room, but required, when they quitted it together, that Miss Thorpe should accompany Miss Morland to the very door of Mr. Allen's house, and that they should there part with a most affectionate and lengthened shake of hands, after learning, to their mutual relief, that they should see each other across the theatre at night, and say their prayers in the same chapel the next morning. Catherine then ran directly upstairs and watched Miss Thorpe's progress down the street from the drawing-room window, admired the graceful spirit of her walk, the fashionable air of her figure and dress, and felt grateful, as well she might, for the chance which had produced her such a friend. Mrs. Thorpe was a widow, and not a very rich one. She was a good-humored, well-meaning woman, and a very indulgent mother. Her eldest daughter had great personal beauty, and the younger ones, by pretending to be as handsome as their sister, imitating her air, and dressing in the same style, did very well. This brief account of the family is intended to supersede the necessity of a long and minute detail from Mrs. Thorpe herself, of her past adventures and sufferings, which might otherwise be expected to occupy the 3 or 4 following chapters, in which the worthlessness of lords and attorneys might be set forth, and conversations which had passed 20 years before be minutely repeated. And that is the end of that chapter. And we'll put my bookmark, which is a little postcard of Thanksgiving last year. Wow. Who would have thought we would be where we are approaching Thanksgiving this year? Who would have thunk it? Not me. Okay, that is the end for today. I will see you tomorrow at 3 for the continuation of Northanger Abbey. Again, I have no idea how long it's going to take us to read this book. So we're just going to play it by ear and see where we end up. Okay, thank you for tuning in. My one little friend, I appreciate you. I hope that your day has been okay, and I hope that it continues to be all right. And I will hopefully see you tomorrow at 3 o'clock for chapters 5 and 6. Okie dokie. Goodbye.